Thank you, Mr. Sibbal. Thank you, Mr. Tandon. I'm probably the least kind of uh, experienced in terms of China sitting here and trying to make some sense. But taking a cue from Mr. Sibbal and Professor Koundapuli, my limited analysis so far is that this next 5 years is going to be primarily regime protection, and probably we will see a China which, like in the past, and probably different from Soviet Union, is a lot of focus will be on regime protection. His entire focus, it seems to be surrounding and regime protection, and probably therefore this leadership, continuous focus on leadership comes. Um, I have noticed a change in their approach to Belt and Road in the last couple of years, particularly after the second summit. And as the reservations about Belt and Road has grown, with India leading from the front, and we definitely have a much different case than many countries in the world, be it in Latin America or Europe, in terms of the sovereignty issue. They have realized that, the Chinese leadership has realized that the Belt and Road initiative in its current form will have a lot of reservations and opposition. And there have been reservations from countries which benefited where regimes benefited from these initiatives in Africa, in Southeast Asia. So the reservations have come from Western African states and even Southern and Eastern African states, where the regimes have probably benefited from some kind of deal between the Chinese when the Belt and Road initiatives were entered into, and the change of guard in some of the countries, or the debt that they found themselves into a debt, and the Sri Lankan experience has also added to their reservations in it. And in fact, nearer home, we can see that Nepal in particular have a very different approach to China, where they insist more on grants rather than loans, because they are not in position to repay loans, and they have made it very clear to the Chinese that they are interested now in grants rather than loans. Bangladesh has also been quite cautious in terms of accepting loans for projects where these projects will probably not lead to a bigger debt, and they also keep the Indian sensitivities in mind. Sri Lanka is completely a different case, where Rajapaksa was also only interested in the regime and the family in protecting their interests. So Belt and Road, and they'll try to or they are trying to soften this reservation against the Belt and Road initiative by coining this term global development initiatives, and he's realized, he means Xi Jinping here has realized that this will not have a smooth run, and therefore they need to change the approach. And the reservations have also come from Europe, and particularly Central European countries, where we find that in the Baltics and other countries, they're slowly expressing reservations in terms of signing new projects, and also in fact accepting trains. For example, Poland was very, very had kind of reservations in terms of in the trains which are coming to Poland with items from China, but Poland had very little to offer to China, and therefore the trains were returning empty. If my memory serves right, they had that train via Poland has stopped in the last, and this is during the COVID period. In the coming 5 years, in terms of in the foreign policy push and the economic push, I feel a lot of push would come in South Asia, as well as Central Asia. Central Asia is one area where the Chinese are pushing very hard in terms of the economic projects as well as strategic influence. I understand the Russians are wary of it. Some of the Central Asians are also wary of it. And in a recent meeting in Astana, in the presence of Putin, I think the message that the Tajik president was trying to be delivered is that why is not Moscow not doing enough in this region, and lot of diaspora has returned from Moscow and they have no jobs, and therefore they're also falling into a kind of a trap, or they can fall into a trap with the Chinese. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan in particular are in a debt trap vis-a-vis the Chinese. From this party congress, I did not I have viewed some observations, and I did not find any clear roadmap that was provided to deal with the present economic difficulties other than a vague statement of a self-purification of the party. We would have noticed that the Chinese stocks plummeted after the new leadership took over, resulting in a rampant sell-off. This might be only a short-term phenomena, but it indicates, according to me, the fear in the stock markets about the direction taken by the leadership. They would emphasize less dependency on imports and more on exports to take care of the US-China decoupling, basically to de-risking and de-leveraging their financial system. One major area which will be taken up will be internationalization of Yuan, and probably focus more on the trade in national currencies, which India also is slowly focusing beyond the traditional partners with various countries in trade in national currencies. And I feel that the Chinese would focus more and more on that, and the Saudi Arabia has already decided to do the oil trade in Wuhan. Their ideal by 2050 would be to replace dollar by yuan for international transactions, including for BRI, but I don't know how much that will be successful. The absence of Li Keqiang and Li Jiangshu, in my opinion, will lead to economics which would mean will have a very, very strong stamp from Xi Jinping. The tech industries will in China will face closer scrutiny, and therefore there will be tightening of internet governance, as Dr. Kondapalli was mentioning. And more companies will be forced to store data locally and share with the Communist Party as and when required. And the replacement of top bosses of the tech companies might continue, and more Xi loyalists and supporters would be in charge of such companies. China's heightened sense of threat is very evident in the discussions around the 20th Party Congress. The objective for the next 5 years would to increase China's international standing and influence and enable China to play a greater role in global governance. The Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative, as I was mentioning, will start to emerge. The rhetoric regarding these initiatives. The littoral countries in Indian Ocean and the Pacific will be initial takers of these initiatives. And if the Chinese can have their third aircraft carrier ready, I think we need to watch our back, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. Wang Yi still retains, as Mr. Sibal had mentioned and Professor Kondapalli, a lot of clout. And I think immediately after the Party Congress, he extended support to Lavrov in a statement. And while this Party Congress did not, I was quite a bit surprised to see that there was no special mention of the Ukraine war or the special military operations by Russia. But immediately after that, the Wang Yi extended support as no limits partnership that China would stand by Russia. As Dr. Kondapalli was mentioning, I think we would be in for a tough time, and we should prepare for a tough time. And it's more or less clear from their approach, and it still baffles me that what would they gain in terms of making India a punching bag, in terms of where they have other historical in terms rivalries to settle, and they're picking up this fight with India, where the economic footprints in India are slowly reducing. The model that the Chinese had applied, particularly in certain Southeast Asian countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, is to push the youths towards a model where human trafficking, flesh trade, small arms trade were rampant, and particularly in areas bordering China, like in northern Myanmar, or areas bordering Myanmar, Thai border, and in Cambodia. So that has seen some kind of pushback, but they are targeting these countries as vulnerable, where they're also introducing the loan apps, where trying to lure the unemployed youth or to provide loans. That model also is not being successful, as India has called that bluff. And with India not the trade increasing, but not the Chinese investments, I think that the relation, the economic, the overall strategic outlook vis-a-vis India is going to remain bleak, not only for the next 5 years. I guess, I don't foresee any kind of a positive atmospherics being created, unless Xi Jinping, before his visit next year for the G20 summit, wants to create some kind of positive atmospherics. Thank you.